So a little while ago we talked about Nintendo shutting down ROM sites with legal threats and tons of money that they were going to sue these places for, and some of them just shut down out of concern or fear that they were next on Nintendo's chopping block. We saw that with MU Paradise, where they said, hey, we're just gonna stop distributing ROMs. It's not worth the possibility of being sued for obscene amounts of money. And while we were talking about, we touched on an interesting idea that Eurogamer presented when they found that the Wii Virtual Console version of Super Mario Bros. Seemed to match exactly to a ROM that was online, and they shared a similar file format that was derived from iNES that was developed specifically so that you could play games, but it also brought along a method to dump NES games, and when you did that, usually you got a little iNES header that was located in the ROM's file and everything. So you could go through and see this ROM to see if it had that imprint on it. They did, and they found that it matched exactly the Wii Virtual Console version to one that was just online that was dumped using this method, and it seemed kind of cut and dry at the time. Oh, maybe Nintendo really did download a ROM and sell it back to people on their Virtual Console. We did talk about how, I mean, it's Nintendo's property, so I guess they technically can. It was just funny because they were shutting down ROM sites and going after them, but then they were also possibly using ROM sites to get their original game that maybe they didn't have. That was a possibility. However, new information seems to have come out now that actually shows how Nintendo did not download the ROM file. In fact, it looks like the method might be the other way around. It's possible, but what it looks like happened here is Nintendo may have dumped their own version of Super Mario Bros. Through similar means because of a certain hire that took place back in 1998. Now, we found this out when a user on Reset Era by the name of Kravi Abadas actually posted an entire write-up as they were doing research for backwards compatibility and emulation they were checking out throughout the years, and they were going to have a video, maybe like a documentary format or whatnot, just informational video that would talk about emulation and backwards compatibility for the different systems. Well, they went back and they found some interesting stuff here. First off, Tomohiro Kawase was actually a hire back in 1998, and they were a developer for the iNES emulator, and they more than likely worked alongside of the different freelancers there to develop, and then also helped to develop the dumping method that would leave that imprint in the game. They worked on a ton of stuff. In fact, all of the different games that needed emulation in some way, his name seemed to show up in those credits. For example, as Kravi points out here, the GB Tower and Pokemon Stadium, which of course would emulate, or basically a Game Boy emulator to let you play the Game Boy Pokemon games. And they also worked on Animal Crossing. And do you remember how Animal Crossing had NES games in there? Remember, you could collect tons of them. There was like 20-something NES games in Animal Crossing, and it's very possible that there was a decision made at one point in time early in the development to include these, so they bring them in, and here they are now developing these NES games, possibly just dumping the NES games with the same method or a similar method that they used with the iNES emulator from before, where they used to freelance, now they're hired with Nintendo. And the way that they figured this out was they went back, they pulled the game from Animal Crossing, so the same Super Mario Bros. Game, pulled it from the Virtual Console on the Wii, and checked them out, and they're exactly the same with that same NES header in there, the NES emulator header, that's all there. So it looks like this ROM that was originally thought to be pulled from the internet and put on the Wii Virtual Console is actually from Animal Crossing, the game that was released a long time ago on the GameCube. They also go on to point out that headers weren't even used in ROMs until around 1998 at the time, so there's a good chance that during development of Animal Crossing, that same header popped up around the time when people were using headers anyway. So it seems to heavily predate the Virtual Console on the Wii, which kind of shows us at this point, at least, there is some pretty serious supporting evidence here that Nintendo didn't actually download a game from the internet to then resell it. They've had this same dumped ROM since probably the late 90s, early 2000s, when they were moving stuff over to the GameCube for Animal Forest. going to Animal Crossing. It's interesting to see. Of course, no one was really sure at the time anyway. Nintendo did comment and say, yeah, we didn't download a ROM. This is all stuff we built internally. And the person that they hired from iNES emulator, instead of, I guess, cease and desisting, they just actually hired somebody on to work on this stuff. And here we are now. We have more information. It was a good write-up. I'm going to leave a link down in the description so you can read through it for yourself, because it was pretty interesting to see that. And it's good detective work on their part. I look forward to seeing their video because it's obviously thoroughly researched. So it'll be interesting to see what they come up with for that. But it's good to know that there is a little more information out there now, possibly a conclusion to this story and this idea. So let me know what you guys think about this down below. It's just more interesting stuff from gaming history to see, and I guess it just shows us that maybe Nintendo really does. They keep an eye on the emulation scene to see who's smart and who's doing all this stuff, and they hire them on. And this person worked on a ton of stuff. Like I said, there was 20-something NES games in Animal Crossing, so they were working on it. And the other interesting note is that NES, the emulator header that was in there, the iNES format, that's on like all the NES games in Animal Crossing. So they were probably just using that same method to dump NES games that they had, and then they just carried that ROM throughout, and it was just discovered by Eurogamer. Interesting stuff nonetheless. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you hit the like button if you liked it, disliked it if not, and I'll see you guys next time.